Class, there are two methods in preparing and analyzing income statements. These are absorption costing and variable costing. Let's take a look of the differences between these two uh, costing methods. The first one, absorption, it is used only for financial reporting. Okay? Sa financial reporting, ginagamit itong absorption costing. Whereas itong variable costing for managerial accounting, meaning these will be used for analysis, okay? And it is basically for internal use. Ang financial, for ang absorption costing, because it will be used for financial reporting, so it need to use uh, the standard of the generally accepted accounting principle. So absorption costing used in external reporting. So it has to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Whereas variable costing used for internal purposes only and not allowed for external reporting. Kaya for internal analysis lang itong variable costing. Variable costing is not allowed for external reporting. Next is absorption costing is also called full costing. Variable costing, it is also called direct or marginal costing. Okay? Direct or marginal costing. Okay. Class, please take note that this is variable. Okay? And this is full costing. Okay. Absorption costing, what if decisions are difficult because of the commingling of fixed and variable overhead? We will learn that. So, ang ibig sabihin dito, basta nag-analyze tayo, what if, kung ganito nangyari, ano ang magiging effect nito sa income, or something like that. So, under absorption costing, medyo mahirap gamitin ang absorption costing if you are making a what-if decisions. So, ang ginagamit for what-if decisions is variable costing. So, this variable costing is very useful in making what-if analysis. Okay? Let's move on. Let's continue the differences between absorption costing and variable costing. Under absorption costing, it assigns all manufacturing cost as product cost. So, ang ibig sabihin, lahat ng manufacturing cost ay product cost. In variable costing, assigns only variable manufacturing cost as product cost. So, let's take a look of the details na napag-aralan nating manufacturing cost. Yung direct materials, direct labor, factory overhead, both variable and fixed cost are assigned as product cost. Diba, direct materials is variable, as we have learned. Direct labor is variable. Factory overhead can be variable and can be fixed cost. At kung mixed cost siya, we have to include that. So all factory overhead, variable and fixed cost, and mixed cost will be part of the product cost. Whereas in variable costing, direct materials is a variable, so it will be part of the product cost. Direct labor is a variable, and only the component of variable cost of the factory overhead. Okay? Hindi kasama ang fixed cost pagdating sa product cost under variable costing. So, yung factory overhead na fixed cost will be part as product cost. I just want to emphasize. Okay? Yung fixed cost na yan, na factory overhead, is part of product cost. Whereas sa variable costing, yung factory overhead na fixed cost, hindi siya product cost. Magiging period cost siya. Magiging part siya ng period cost. We will illustrate that later. Makikita niyo dyan sa illustration natin. Okay? So the basic difference between absorption costing And variable costing is the treatment of fixed factory overhead. Ano yon? Ang ibig sabihin, itong fixed factory overhead na ito under absorption costing, product cost siya. Itong fixed factory overhead na ito, okay, is period cost, hindi siya product cost. Okay, yun ang main difference. Let's continue doing the analysis. Okay, so product cost, under absorption costing, we have the direct materials, direct labor, factory overhead variable, factory overhead fixed, at syempre, kasama na dyan yung factory overhead na mixed. Okay? And then for period cost, we have selling administrative expenses na variable at selling and admin expense na fixed. So basta selling and admin, whether it's variable or fixed, they are period cost. Okay? So variable costing, obviously, we will include under the product cost only the variable component. Okay? Like direct materials, variable yan, di ba? Direct labor is variable. And the factory overhead na variable. Yun lang ang composition ng product cost. Okay? Sa period cost, okay, itong factory overhead fixed will be part of the period cost. Okay, under variable costing. So class, only the variable components ng manufacturing cost ang i-consider as product cost under variable costing. Okay? Yung factory overhead na fixed will be considered as period cost. Okay. For presentation purposes, okay, itong selling and admin remains period cost, pero ilalagay lang natin sa para mapagsama-sama natin yung mga variable. Kaya sasama, but it still remains a period cost. Okay? But yung sequence lang ang iniba natin dito. And then the selling admin na fix will be part also of period cost. Okay? So, here's a variable costing. Lahat lang ng variable ang product cost. Yung factory overhead will become period cost as well as the regular selling admin expense variable and the selling admin fixed. Okay? Let's move on. So, this is another way of illustrating it. Ang product cost natin, direct materials, which is variable cost, direct labor is a variable cost, factory overhead can be variable, can be fixed, and can be mixed. Okay? And we have our period cost, which are selling expenses, administrative expenses, and kahit na ano siya, kung even if it is variable cost or fixed cost, period cost pa rin siya. Okay? So, sa variable costing, lahat lang, ang product cost, lahat lang variable. So, in this case, direct materials, that is variable. Direct labor, that is variable. Factory overhead, na variable cost. Okay? At ang period cost natin, yung factory overhead na fixed cost. Okay. So, paano mangyayari sa mixed cost? So, that's the reason why we have studied that the mixed cost will be, we need to get the variable cost component and the fixed cost component. So, yung mixed cost na variable mapupunta sa product cost at yung fixed cost component mapupunta sa period cost. And we are going to include selling expenses and admin expenses, both variable and fixed, as period cost. Okay? So note class, selling and administrative expenses, both variable and fixed, are not relevant for the computation of unit product cost. Bakit? Kasi period cost sila. Okay. Let's have a presentation of income statement. Paano ba pinipresent? Napag-aralan na natin itong absorption costing. Okay, ito yung regular way of presenting the income statement, wherein we have sales, less cost of goods sold, and under cost of goods sold, we have the direct materials, direct labor, factory overhead. So, variable cost. Ang factory overhead, lahat ng variable cost, fixed cost, or mixed cost, isasama natin siya sa cost of goods sold. Okay? Sales less cost of goods sold will give you your gross profit. So remember, class, under absorption costing, this will be the composition of product cost as we have learned from the previous slide. Okay? Then after this, we will deduct the expenses, which are the selling and admin, and both variable cost and fixed cost. And then, as we have learned, selling and admin are period cost. So we will have our net income or net loss. So sales under absorption costing, less cost of goods sold will give you your gross profit, less expenses will give you your net income. So under cost of goods sold, we have considered all manufacturing costs, direct materials, direct labor, factory overhead, irrespective of their behavior, kasama lahat yan sa product cost. So variable costing class, it will still be sales. Ang ililess natin will only be the variable cost, less variable cost. So ano yung mga variable cost? We have the direct material, which is the variable cost, direct labor, which is a variable cost, and factory overhead na variable cost component. Okay? And class, okay? Because we are saying here less variable cost. By the way, this will be our product cost, right? We will also deduct, okay, the variable cost component of the selling and admin, kung ano yung mga variable. Okay? For presentation. Okay. So if we will deduct all the variable cost, however, this selling and admin is not a product cost, but it is a period cost. Okay? So sales less variable cost will give you what you call contribution margin. So under variable costing, sales less variable cost will give you contribution margin less fixed cost expenses, which are the factory overhead na fixed, selling and admin na fixed. Okay? Will give you your net income or loss. So class, factory overhead, selling expenses, admin expenses, the fixed costs are all period cost. Okay? So, ganyan ang presentation ng income statement. Okay? So, variable costing, sales, less variable cost will give you contribution margin, less fixed cost or expenses will give you your net income. Okay. Let's have an illustration. This is what is given. Units inventory beginning, 0. Number of units produced, 10,000. Number of units sold, 8,000. And these are the selling price per unit and the variable cost per unit. Okay? And the fixed cost per year. Okay? Here, yung manufacturing overhead given in per unit, in selling and admin, in total amount. Okay? So what is required? Determine the number of units of ending inventory. Number 2, determine the product's unit cost under absorption costing and variable costing. And third, prepare the income statement. Okay, let's do that. This is what is given. The first thing is determine the number of units of the ending inventory. Okay, if we will determine the formula, okay, or the equation in determining the ending inventory, it will be presented like this. So inventory end equals, okay, inventory beginning plus units produced minus units sold. Okay. So actually, itong equation na to, pwede nyong i-modify according kung ano yung hinahanap nyo. Okay? By way of transposition. Okay, I will not discuss that transposition because I know that at this time you should have learned this already. Dapat alam nyo na yung transposition. But I will give an example para ma-refresh ang inyong knowledge about that. So kung ang hinahanap, ang required is ending inventory. So we have determined that this will be the equation. So ang inventory beginning natin is 0. Okay? Ang units produced natin ilan? 10,000. Minus units sold, 8,000. So, ang ating inventory end is 2,000. Okay? Suppose that, if we will put this equation, ganito yon. Suppose that ang missing ay yung units sold. Kunyari, ang given is inventory end, inventory beginning, tsaka units produced. Ang wala is units sold. How are we going to modify the equation? Okay. By using transposition, by the way, let's put the example, okay? If our inventory end is 2,000, and if our inventory beginning is 0, and then the units produced is 10,000, so ang missing is units sold. So by transposition, we can put this unit sold on this side of the equation. This is negative, so magiging positive na siya, units sold. So ang ibig sabihin is that yung amount, yung quantity na makukuha nyo or yung unit na makukuha nyo should be expressed in positive. Okay? So in this case, our inventory beginning will remain here. The units produced will remain here. Okay. And now, we can transpose this, okay, on the other side dahil kailangan na ang kinuhanap natin is unit sold. So if we will transpose this, it will be minus inventory end. So putting the absolute amount, so inventory beginning is 0, units produced is 10, and inventory end is 2,000. So ang units sold natin is 8,000. Okay, class? So you can modify the equation. Kung ang kailangan ay inventory beginning, then modify it. Kung kailangan ay units produced, then you can modify it using transposition. Okay? Okay. So the next requirement is determine the product's unit cost. Product's unit cost on both absorption and variable costing. Okay. So the product unit cost, let's have two columns, absorption and variable costing. Okay. So product unit cost, okay, for absorption costing, we have to consider the direct materials, correct? Ano yung unit cost ng direct materials? 50. Okay, direct materials is variable, so nandito rin yan sa variable costing. Sa direct labor, which is 100. And direct labor, as we all know, is a variable. So, nandiyan din yan sa variable costing. Manufacturing overhead na variable, okay? Or factory overhead na variable. This is synonymous class, ha? Manufacturing overhead, factory overhead, they are the same. Okay, it's 50. So, dahil variable siya, nandiyan din siya sa variable. Okay. Ano pa isasama natin? Class, hinihingi lang dito products unit cost. Okay? So, under here, isasama natin ang fix sa absorption. Okay? Pero isasama ba natin siya sa variable? No, hindi. Kasi under variable, hindi siya kasama as product cost, yung fixed. Okay? So, in this case, itong selling and admin, sasama ba? Hindi rin. Kasi ano siya? Period cost siya. Okay? Ang hinihingi lang dito, product unit cost. Okay. So, the product unit cost under absorption costing is 50 plus 100 plus 50 will give you 225. Sa variable costing, you have 50, 100 plus 50 is 200. So, under absorption costing, ang product's unit cost is 225 per unit. Sa variable costing, 200 per unit. Okay? Let's move on, class. Okay, this is the, ang hinihingi naman ngayon is income statement. So, under income statement, based on what is given, our unit sold is 8,000. So, gagawa tayo ng income statement for 8,000. Okay? So, yan ang unit sold natin, 8,000. Under absorption costing, so our sales sa given is 300 per unit. So, under absorption costing, the sales will be 8,000 times 300 per unit will give you 2.4 million. Okay? And the cost of goods sold, direct materials per unit is 50. So, 50 times 8,000 will give you 400. And direct labor, 100. So, times 8,000 units, that's 800,000. And the factory overhead, the variable is and fixed. 50 variable times 8,000 will give you 400. Fixed is 25, will give you 200,000. So, these are the cost of goods sold. So, i-add natin yan. Will be the total cost of goods sold. So, sales less cost of goods sold will give you your gross profit. Okay? And then we will deduct the expenses. And we have the selling and admin of 100,000. Yun yung given. That will be your net income. Okay. So, under the regular way of presenting it, or the full costing or absorption costing, we have a net income of 500. If you will use the variable costing, okay, sales will remain the same. Okay. So here, we are not presenting the cost of goods sold, but the variable. Okay. We will deduct the direct materials, direct labor, and the variable here. Okay. Okay, class? Yun ang i-deduct natin. So, yun yung product cost natin. Okay. And class, our total variable is 1.6 million. Okay. Class, yung walang ibinigay na selling and admin na variable. If you will take note, itong 100,000 are presented as fixed cost. Okay? Kung meron, ilalagay natin siya doon. But at this situation, wala namang binigay. But though it will not be part of product cost, but still a period cost. But the presentation will be part of all the variable cost. Okay, so 2.4 million minus 1.6 million, you will have 800,000. Okay? But, class, now this fixed cost will be presented as period cost. So, this 200,000. Okay. However, class, itong 200,000 na to is based lang sa units sold. Kaya, 25 times 8,000 is 200,000. But under the variable costing, itong fixed ay lahat, okay, na na-produced. Ang na-produced ay 10,000 units. So, yung 25,000 will not be multiplied by 8,000 units, pero yung total production. And that will be presented as period cost. So 25 times the total number of units produced, which is 10,000. So you will have 250. And 800 minus 250 minus the selling and admin of 100,000. So take note, class, ha? Dito, ang kinonsider lang yung naibenta because cost of goods sold. Dito ang kinonsider for the total production. Okay? Will give you 800 minus 250 and 100 will give you 450,000. Okay, class? Okay. So take note, class, these are deductions because there is here less expenses. Okay.